my optimism for this team. And I was telling you earlier on the phone that I'm basically back at square one with this team. It's just put up or shut up time. I'm not going to believe anything until I see it. And I wouldn't say that there's even a confident bone in my body right now when it.
There's no way of knowing that. People who disagree, I'm a homer. People who agree, whatever. But every facet of the game, aside of a little bit of special teams, was bad. The coaching was bad. The schemes were bad. The individual play was bad. Effort was bad. Everything. It was the exact opposite of what you hope to see a few times a year out of your squads. You want to see everything humming and clicking on all cylinders. You know you're not going to get that every single game, but you typically don't, and you never want to see everything go about as bad as it could go. Aside of maybe some turnovers or maybe even worse injuries, that game couldn't have gone any worse. And by now, everybody's heard at least the clips and stuff like that from the press conferences of coaches not buying into this being a tough physical team, players having that sense of entitlement that they should just be able to show up and win certain games. All of that stuff, I think, is going to be more than enough to just give them focus, man. I think we don't need to reinvent the wheel, and we don't need the sky doesn't have to fall every time Nebraska loses or looks like shit in certain areas yet. Now, if they string together some games like that, for sure. But the landscape of college football is so different now than you used to lose one game and you were out of it. Not just because of the playoffs, but because the top was so lopsided from the bottom, even the middle in some cases, that it was just damning if you lost a game. And now taking away, the Maryland is more athletic. Maryland's roster on paper and rankings, ratings, whatever you want to call it, is better than Minnesota's. And you can't just assume since we beat a better roster, we're going to go and do this same thing to this team, but worse because they're not as good. I mean, it comes down to matchups. I'm constantly on scheme, coaching game plan, execution of game plan. All of those things factor in, and Nebraska just completely shit the bed in all those areas last week. I find it very hard to believe that Rule's going to let that happen again. It's you tell your kid 100 times not to touch the stove because it's hot, and you want them to listen to you, but sometimes they're going to touch the stove, they're going to burn their hand and go, "Oh shit, they weren't messing around. They know what they're talking about." I feel like that's basically what happened last week at Minnesota. I think it's going to light a fire under the whole team, not just the players. Like I'm going to go out and crush it, but like the focus, the execution, the attention to details leading up to the game and during the game. I think it's going to look a lot different. And I'd feel and come back, you're not playing the same rosters of those teams I mentioned. So I don't have that concern. I don't see their quarterback super elusive where he's going to gouge them, take off and do things. Minnesota didn't either, but they had so much success with the ground game and especially the short to intermediate range passing game that they didn't need the big explosive plays. They got the one on the outside zone. Butler talked about that, about how teams that don't even run that will plug it in on Nebraska game weeks because they know how bad we are at stopping it. I think that's another thing that's a combination of things. I think that's where you really expose being undersized on the defensive line. It's a lot easier for the offensive line to get you not being in the right spots, not taking the right angles in pursuit, but most importantly, not even trying to tackle, just trying to dive and cut guys' legs out. And it's you're in the Big Ten, man. You're not playing some of these teams that aren't ready for you to dive at their ankles or getting slapped on their legs going to bring them down. So I don't think there's anything catastrophic that like can't be fixed. It's to me, it's just mostly mental, man. It's discipline, mentality, and focus. And I think those are things that you can really decide. Okay, it's an effort thing, just like tackling. Like I'm going to put the effort in. I'm going to execute. I'm not skipping steps. You might have some guys still doing it, but I just think it's going to be a big turnaround as far as that goes. As far as that Griffin Wild kid goes, he's good. He's legit, but I'm still begging Butler to this game, for example, put Sayer right on him the entire game. If he needs help in bracket or whatever else, get Singleton or anybody that you want as far as safety goes to give you a little help. Man up everybody else and just dare them to keep throwing the ball and not let them get loose with the running game, get comfortable. They're going to try and do what Minnesota did. They're going to impact that has on other teams' willingness to keep trying to run the ball. On offense, man, Holgerson said basically what we've all been saying. It's there's plenty of blame to go around, but it seemed like his focus, he didn't harp on it a lot, but he just kind of mentioned things throughout his interview where it kind of made the light bulb go off in my head that like he's bouncing back and referring back to the quick game, or I'm sorry, the quick pass game. So I really want to see that. We don't need receivers taking 4 seconds to run their routes. We don't need guys thinking that they're blocking and they're supposed to be on a route, right? All those drops to throw and there's nobody there. You can't fall into that trap of losing yards on first down every possession and letting Northwestern run the ball for 4 to 6 yards every first down. Like it's just an absolute recipe for disaster. I would say almost more important than winning the turnover battle. I mean, depending on how big the margin is. But the biggest proof that I have is we haven't had a game all year where we look that bad all the way around. So it's one game compared to 5 games is not equivalent. You know what I mean? So like I'm not where you're at as far as I have no reason to believe things are going to get better. But I do agree with you on the like you got to show us what's happening. You know, it's up until last week they would have issues or flaws, weaknesses, and my big frustration was they wouldn't adjust or adapt to it during a game, but they would from week to week, and then maybe a new set of problems would occur, but most of the problems didn't carry over. This game is just like I said, not so much the football side for the players, other than the focus and discipline, and then the coaches just call your game, man. Like if you're gonna stand there in these press conferences or whenever interviews or whenever somebody's talking to you and talk about we've got the guys to do it, our roster's better than most, we can compete with all these other teams, then call the game like it. If they're not executing on the field, that's on them, and that's unfortunate. That's another issue to address, but don't snowball that negative effect by going, okay, now I'm going to be very one dimensional. I'm going to be very conservative in all my play calling, and it's just going to cascade and create a bigger issue. So still good and can still knock you off any weeks. Nebraska has to adapt that mentality at some point. And like Rule keeps saying, don't worry about who the team is or what the logo is. Go beat your guy. Go do what you're supposed to do. Do your assignment. Stay disciplined and win your matchup, your one-on-ones every single chance you can, and you're gonna be fine. Then it will come down to who's more talented. But they haven't been playing on that level consistently all year, and they didn't do it at all last week. So, but I think that kind of punch in the mouth is what they needed to get rid of that sense of entitlement that we can just show up and we're better on paper than them, so we'll win.
This is just going to be one of those times where I really hope that you're right and that I'm wrong. I just, it's crazy. I lost hope. We didn't even get into the end zone, man. We couldn't get into the end zone versus Minnesota. We are midway through the college football season, and Gary and I have been racking up money using Profit X. It's America's #1 sports prediction market, where you too can win real money predicting sports outcomes in 40 plus states. We use it because you get better odds than traditional sports books because you're not playing against the house. You're playing against actual other people. Sign up at profitx.co or download the app and use the promo code RANT. And you'll get up to $200 in ProfitX cash on all your plays for the first 30 days. Sign up now and start winning real money predicting sports.
And that has been a consistent problem all year. The scoring in the red zone, the converting on short down or short yardage downs.
We thought that was going to bite us against the big schools, and it bit us against Minnesota.
When you create new problems for yourself and haven't fixed those are magnified, those problems you already had. So there's definitely cause for concern. I don't think any Nebraska fan should be going into any games thinking this is a for sure win. But because of that doesn't mean everything's a for sure loss. Does that make sense? I'm not trying to like talk in circles, but guys have to do what they're literally being paid to do, and then you see who's better. But you can't go half-assed against these teams that are hungrier than you because they've been told they're not as good as you, but they are obviously good enough to be on scholarship and getting NIL money because you'll get punched in the face just like Minnesota did.
I really hate to say this, I hate to think this, I hate to feel this, but I think we lose this game in like a routine way. Like, oh no, we couldn't protect the quarterback. Oh no, they ran all over us. And so I'm going to go like 27-24 Northwestern, and it makes me sick.
Yeah, I don't see a loss at all, man. Other than possibly that Colorado game, Rule's first year, and that's a maybe. That was more of a quarterback couldn't feel the snap issue, but it was just a horrible game to watch from a Nebraska fan perspective. We haven't really seen games like that. Even in losses, the effort, at least from the vast majority of the team and stuff, is there. Even when we were missing tackles in certain games and having other issues, I don't. I don't have a lot of reason to assume that we're going to have back-to-back games of just trash football all the way around. So with that, like I have a lot more confidence. I think that's kind of the punch in the face they needed to acknowledge, hey, everybody's good. There's just levels to good. But whatever good you are doesn't matter if you're going to just cruise in and think that by showing up you're going to win a game. You know, like everybody's bad if that's your mindset. It doesn't matter what your ceiling is, you're just laying on the floor. So there's going to be a lot, as always, after every game where we can go back and say they need to work on this. This is still an issue, blah, blah, blah. But that's been the case after every game this year. And they were 5-1 going into last week. But I just think this is a good spot for Nebraska to be able to come back home, kind of have that. I would say I would be embarrassed, sitting there watching film and just feel like head down, nobody look at me as I'm getting exposed on film. But that's the entire team. And I think they should be anxious to come out. This is probably I don't mean it in any disrespect towards Northwestern, but probably the worst roster we'll play the rest of the year. So it's a good get right game in my mind. And I think that Nebraska it might look close at times, but I think it'll be a 10 to 14 ish point win for Nebraska.
As always, guys, in the comments, tell us your score prediction for this game. Who wins and why? We'll see you very soon for the live stream for this game, Saturday morning, 11 a.m. Till then, go Big Red.